Caleb didn't just stand on my grandmother's antique coffee table. He ground his heels into the mahogany. He raised a glass of 18-year-old Scotch. I paid for, and silenced the room. To the future, he bellowed, his face flushed with unearned victory. Finally evicting the ghost of that old hag to turn this dusty museum into a world-class crypto retreat. Then, he pointed the glass directly at me. And a special thank you to Madison. If you hadn't been too incompetent to hold on to this property, I never would have been able to step up and buy the deed this morning. You lost the legacy, Maddie, but don't worry. I saved it. The room went dead silent. Everyone looked at me with pity. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just took a slow sip of my ice water, set the glass down on a coaster, and unlocked my phone. Before I tell you what flashed on the screen when I unlocked my phone, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I didn't swipe through contacts or text a friend for moral support. I opened a black icon on my home screen, the kind that doesn't have a label, and tapped a single red button marked Authorized Entry. Outside, beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows where the lake was swallowing the last of the sunset, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness. They weren't police lights. Not yet. They belonged to a heavy-duty truck, the kind driven by men who don't knock. Caleb was still pontificating to my parents about his vision for the estate. First thing to go is that library. He laughed, pouring more of my scotch. Smells like dead people and poverty. We need an open concept for the investors. I watched him, feeling a strange, cold detachment. My name is Madison, and I'm 28 years old. To my family, I'm the failed artist. The one who floated through her 20s while everyone else got serious jobs. They don't know that I handle forensic asset recovery for high-net-worth divorces. I don't paint portraits. I paint financial corners that people like Caleb can't get out of. 5 years ago, this room didn't smell like expensive cologne and arrogance. It smelled like antiseptic and fear. Grandma was dying in the master bedroom, and the estate was drowning in 60 years of accumulated debt. I begged Shelby, my older sister, to help me save it. I begged Caleb. Let it rot, Madison, Caleb had said back then, not even looking up from his phone. It's a money pit. The old lady's legacy is debt. Walk away. They walked away. They let the bank notices pile up on the porch like autumn leaves. But I didn't walk away. I drained the trust fund I'd built trading crypto in college. Money they didn't know existed, and I bought the debt. I bought the deed. I bought the very floorboards Caleb was currently scuffing with his Italian loafers. I kept it quiet, letting them believe the house was stuck in probate hell. Because I knew the second they sniffed equity, they'd come for blood. And I was right. I stepped into the kitchen to escape the sound of his voice, needing a moment before the storm hit. I leaned against the Marble Island marble I had paid to restore last winter and closed my eyes. The door swung open behind me. It was Shelby. She looked perfect in her designer dress, the golden child glowing with reflected glory. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't offer a hug. Fix your face, Maddie, she hissed, grabbing a tray of hors d'oeuvres. You're bringing the vibe down. Caleb is doing big things for this family. He's finally fixing the mess you and Grandma left behind. Is that what he's doing? I asked, my voice flat. Yes. He's stepping up. Unlike you. She shoved the tray into my hands. Try to look grateful for once. He's saving us. She turned on her heel and marched back out to the party. I looked down at the tray of food I had paid for, in the house I owned, being served to guests invited by a man who had stolen the credit for my survival. They thought I was the black sheep because I was quiet. They forgot that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, it's just the sound of a trap waiting to snap shut. I set the tray down on the counter, hard. Through the front window, I saw the truck's headlights turn off. The engine cut. Heavy boots hit the gravel driveway. The wait was over. I moved toward the foyer, intending to open the door for Jared. But Caleb sidestepped, planting himself directly in my path. He wasn't just tipsy on expensive scotch anymore. He was high on the fumes of his own imagined authority. Going somewhere, Maddie? He asked, his voice dripping with that faux concern he used when he wanted to humiliate me in public. I'm getting the door, I said, my voice steady. The door can wait. He reached onto the serving tray I had abandoned, grabbed a wet, crumpled cocktail napkin, and pressed it into my hand. It was cold and stained with salsa. You missed a spot on the rug over there. Clean it up before the investors see it. I looked at the napkin in my hand. Then I looked at him. He smiled, a shark baring its teeth. He was enjoying this. He wanted me on my knees, scrubbing. Actually, he continued, leaning in close so only I could smell the alcohol on his breath. While you're in cleaning mode, we need to talk about the guest cottage. I need your keys. My stomach tightened. The guest cottage wasn't just a building. It was where I kept everything that mattered. My grandmother's easel. My paints. The archives of the estate's history. It was the only space they hadn't invaded yet. My partners are flying in tomorrow. Crypto visionaries. Real players. They need a private space to strategize. He swirled his drink. I need you to clear your junk out by midnight. All of it. The old canvases, the boxes, that dusty furniture. Drag it to the curb. That's not junk, I said, the anger finally vibrating in my throat. That's Grandma's life. That's my work, Caleb laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a sound. Your work? Maddie, you paint pictures of ducks. That's a hobby. What I'm doing here, building wealth. Creating a legacy that's work. We need the space for people who actually contribute to society. Not whatever you are. He patted my cheek. He actually patted my cheek. Midnight, he whispered. Or I call the junk haulers myself. He turned his back on me. Confident that I would crumble. Confident that I would obey. He thought he had just evicted me. He thought he had just erased the last trace of my resistance. He didn't know he had just signed his own death warrant. I didn't wipe the rug. I dropped the salsa-stained napkin on the floor, right on the toe of his polished Italian loafer. I didn't look back as I walked to the front door. I wasn't opening it for guests. I was opening it for the end of his world. I threw the deadbolt. I didn't have to pull the handle. The heavy oak door was pushed open from the outside, with enough force to rattle the hinges. Jared stepped into the foyer. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing steel-toed work boots caked in red clay, a high-visibility vest that smelled like diesel, and a tool belt that jingled with the heavy, reassuring sound of cold steel. He looked like a demolition ball in human form. He walked past me, leaving a trail of mud on the pristine white marble I had polished myself. He didn't look at the guests. He didn't look at the expensive art. He walked straight into the center of the living room, where the music died instantly. Caleb spun around, his face flushing a dangerous shade of purple. Who the hell is this? He shouted, looking around for the security he hadn't hired. How did you get in here? Jared stopped 5 feet from him. He was 6'4", and built like a linebacker who moonlighted as a bouncer. He looked Caleb up and down with the kind of boredom usually reserved for swatting flies. Security? Caleb barked, trying to regain control of the room. Get this workman out of my house. Jared ignored him. He turned his back on Caleb completely, and scanned the room until his eyes locked on mine. He held up a metal clipboard thick with paperwork. Miss Hayes, Jared said, his voice deep and gravelly, carrying to every corner of the silent room. We have a problem with the work order. What work order? My mother asked, her voice trembling. Madison, do you know this man? I walked into the center of the room. I didn't rush. I let my heels click rhythmically on the hardwood. Yes, I know him. He works for me, Caleb interrupted, stepping between us. I hired the contractor. If you have an issue, pal, you talk to me. I'm the one signing the checks. Jared finally looked at him. You haven't signed a check that cleared in 3 weeks, buddy. And that's not the problem. Jared looked back at me. He handed me the clipboard. The demolition permit this guy gave me this morning? It's a forgery. The permit number belongs to a garage build in the next county. And I'm not ripping $45,000 worth of vintage copper wiring out of these walls until the actual owner signs off on the liability. The silence in the room wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of everyone's lungs. Copper wiring? My father repeated, confusion wrinkling his forehead. Caleb said you were restoring the original fixtures. Restoring? Jared laughed. A harsh, dry sound. The work order says strip and scrap. He wanted the walls gutted by Monday. That's a lie, Caleb screamed, his voice cracking. He's drunk. Look at him. He's trying to extort me. I looked at the clipboard. I looked at the work order. It was dated today. It was signed by Caleb, and right there, in black and white, were the instructions to strip the estate of its most valuable internal assets. The copper, the brass fittings, the antique sconces, and sell them for scrap metal. He wasn't flipping the house. He was harvesting it. He's not drunk, Caleb, I said, my voice calm, cutting through his panic. And he's not talking to you. He's talking to the owner. I am the owner, Caleb roared, slamming his empty glass onto the table so hard the stem snapped. I have the deed. I bought it this morning. No, I said. You didn't. I looked at my parents. I looked at Shelby, who was frozen by the fireplace, clutching her purse like a shield. Because I bought it 5 years ago. Caleb's laugh was brittle, like glass about to shatter. He looked at the guests, spreading his hands in a gesture of helpless amusement. Okay. Very funny. Madison, you bought it? With what money? Your allowance? He turned to my father. She's delusional, Dad. She's probably off her meds. I'm going to call the sheriff to escort these trespassers off my property. Do it, I said. Call them. I didn't wait for him to reach for his phone. I pulled out mine, said nothing, and mirrored my screen to the living room TV. The 80-inch display went black, then lit up with a crystal-clear PDF. The notary seal was unmistakable. The deed of trust. Dated 5 years ago. Sole owner. Madison Hayes. That's fake, Caleb shouted. She photoshopped it. I swiped again. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Forensic audit. Caleb Vance. Gambling debt. Liquidation timelines. I didn't just buy the house, I said calmly. I've been tracking your finances since you tricked Shelby into signing that loan. Another swipe. Emails with a salvage yard. Copper and brass liquidation. Urgent cash. You weren't renovating, I continued. You were stripping the house to pay $45,000 in gambling debt. The room went dead silent. Shelby stared at the screen, color draining from her face. I swiped one last time. A loan application appeared, my forged signature. That's bank fraud, I said. And since you used this address, you dragged the entire family into a felony investigation. I expected him to break. Instead, his face twisted with rage. He lunged for me, stopping only when Jared stepped in front of him. You set me up, Caleb screamed. You watched me and said nothing. You trapped me. I didn't make you steal, I said flatly. You acted broke, he roared. If I'd known you had money, I wouldn't have done this. This is your fault. The logic was breathtaking. In his mind, my silence was the crime. I didn't trap you, I said. I turned on the lights. Get out, I added. Now. Caleb didn't move. He straightened his tie and smiled. I can't, he said calmly. And you can't make me. He pulled out new keys. I changed the locks this morning. Moved my wife and baby in. We're tenants now. You'll need 6 months and a court order, my mother whispered, pleading. Madison? He has a baby. He committed fraud, I said. Caleb seized the moment. She's single. She doesn't need this house. I have a family. Who deserves it more? My parents hesitated. That betrayal hurt more than the theft. Then I nodded. You're right, Caleb. He smirked until I swiped the screen again. A zoning certificate appeared. But tenant rights only apply to residential property, I said. Willow Creek isn't a home. It's a commercial hospitality venue. A hotel. You're not a tenant, I continued. You're trespassing in a business. I turned to Jared. He opened the front door. Blue lights washed over the porch. The county sheriff stood waiting, squatting in a commercial property. I said, watching Caleb go pale. Is criminal trespass. The sheriff didn't ask questions. He saw the certificate, the license, the lock-picking kit on the table. He cuffed Caleb. Shelby screamed. My mother begged. I didn't destroy anything, I said quietly. I just stopped paying for the damage. When the cars disappeared down the driveway, I locked the door. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mine. I stepped onto the deck, breathed in the cold night air, and exhaled for the first time in years. They called me the black sheep because I was quiet. They forgot the wolf is quiet too right before it bites.